Okay, what's the scientific method? Well, you do research. You create a hypothesis from the research, and then you create an experiment to test out the hypothesis. And then you have data, and then you make observations, and then you refine the hypothesis, okay? And this is what we believe a way to model the act of thinking. And you're taught this in every class, even in English class, right? You do research, then you create an outline, right? The outline has a thesis with 3 evidence, right? And then you write it out, write a draft, you edit it, and you repeat the process. Okay, this is what you're taught in school. Okay, I'm going to say something that will shock you, okay? This is what you're taught in school. This is what you believe works. But as someone who is much older than you are, as someone who actually thinks for a living, who teaches for a living, who writes for a living, I'm going to tell you, how you actually think is the complete opposite. Okay? So what happens is you actually think or imagine the story or the idea to begin with, okay? And then you start working backwards to create the process. You're taught in school, it's a process that creates the idea. What I'm telling you is that in reality, it's the idea that creates the process. Okay? So let me give you an example of this. If you look at every major scientific discovery, it all came to the person in a dream or when he was, or it sort of popped into that person's head. Okay? It's just think of a light bulb popping up, okay? So an example is Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein created his theory relatively not in a laboratory, not by doing research with other scientists, but simply by sitting in a patent office every day and just daydreaming. And then, boom, the idea came to his head. He's like, okay, now I have this idea. Now what he's going to do is go back and look for the evidence to support his idea. Yes?
Hypothesis is like an
Okay.
idea.
Is a hypothesis the idea? Okay. No, the hypothesis is the assumption. Okay? What I'm trying to tell you is this. What I'm trying to tell you is the idea or the final product comes first. Then you go backwards. Okay? And you create the draft. Then you create the outline. Then you do the research. Okay? Now, I know this sounds weird, but let me give more examples. James Watson came up with the double helix model of DNA. How he did this was he spent years and years working to figure out how DNA worked. And then, boom, one day he had a dream of a staircase, a double staircase. And he's like, maybe that's the model I need to use. And then he started to do more research and he discovered, hey, this works. Okay? But the question then is, how did that get into his head? Okay, let me give you another example. I write books, and I've written 3 novels. And you won't believe this, okay? But my wife is here, and like she knows how I work. You would think that when you write a book, you would spend every day at the desk and read books, take notes, and then transform it into a book, right? I don't do that. What I do is I lie in bed and I might play some video games or I might read a book, okay? I get up, I walk to the park, and I come back and I have all these ideas. And I write down all these ideas over 1 hour, 2 hours on the computer, okay? And then I'm exhausted. I've run out of ideas. And I'm like, okay, tomorrow, what am I going to do if I have no ideas? I can't write anymore. But what happens is the next day I get up and I have new ideas. And I write it back, and I write it down again, okay? So it's not like I am generating these ideas. It's more like I'm receiving these ideas. If you actually watch me work, it is almost impossible to think that I actually do any work because I'm always like lying around or walking around or daydreaming, okay? My wife tells me that when I write or when I work, it's like I'm possessed. I'm possessed by something, okay? Meaning like I don't see anything and I really don't know what other people are doing because I don't care. I don't care because I'm focused on my work, okay? Also, I'll give you another example, the way I teach. Now, when you see me teach, you think, oh, you must have a script. You must have outlined the class. I don't do that. I have a conception, I have a framework in my head. I come to class and I teach. How do I teach? I watch your observations, I watch your facial expressions, and based on your responses, I then start to flesh out the framework. And how do I do that? Because I'm always accessing a higher force, and I'm receiving this information that I can then articulate to you in class. And that's why if you have been with me for a long, long time, 10 years, you will know I've never taught the same class ever. You can go on YouTube and watch all my videos. I teach this class different each time. Because each time, what I'm doing is I'm channeling a higher force and bringing it to you. But it is a conversation. It's a dialogue. And it's no different from reading a book or seeing a great painting, okay? Each experience is unique because a painting or the book, it's almost like a platform for you to experience the divine or higher power. Okay? When you read a great book, that's literally what you feel. You feel as though you are in conversation with the universe. And this book is really a portal into the universe. Okay? If you read a great book, I'm not sure if you had read a great book, okay? So, if you want to really be creative, you have to trust the universe. If you really want to destroy your creativity, you follow this system, okay? So what I'm telling you, and I know this is going to be weird, but school, it destroys your creativity because it teaches you a process that does not work. No scientist in the history of humanity has ever come up with a great idea using the scientific method. I guarantee you. They've all came up with a great idea through their imagination, through their intuition, by channeling the divine. Okay, that's every single scientist, including Einstein, Newton,